Hello, Mark Debeljak here, Director of Rubiix Business Accountants. Today we have another of our client interview series. Today I'm joined by Hayden Burt, Founder and Director of Evisent. Hayden is an IT professional and his business currently runs Rubiix IT and cybersecurity requirements. Hayden, tell me about what you do.
Hi, Mike. First of all, thanks for having me today and covering off this really important issue. My background is in corporate IT, so about 20 years experience working for organizations small and large around the world. And I started working in security about 15 years ago, back working for a specialist security company in the UK. Now, look, it's been a bit of a passion of mine ever since, but over the past probably 6 to 8 years, due to the change in the threat landscape, and the advent of Bitcoin, which has pushed cybercrime forward, it's become my primary focus in my work. Now, at Evisent, as my role as the founder and the principal consultant, but also my team, our focus is bringing that experience to the SME market and helping protect small and medium enterprises from cybercrime.
Hayden, what are the most common mistakes you see in terms of cybersecurity in small business?
Good question, Mark. The mistakes we see are more around assumptions, and they're not technical issues, they are assumptions. So the first one is really assuming your business won't be a target of cybercrime. Many small businesses think that they're too small, they don't hold enough important data, hackers just won't come after them. And that's really not the truth. All businesses are a risk or are at risk. And you could say that the small businesses are actually the better targets because they've got less resources for security. So as an attacker, I would be thinking about effort versus reward. And the effort to attack a small business is much, much lower than to attack a larger business. Therefore, they're a much more common target. The second issue we see is people assume that they understand the risks. Now, traditionally, we look at risks in the business that might be physical break-ins, or we put locks and alarms, we buy insurance, we think about fire and floods, we think about professional mistakes, and we have professional indemnity insurance, things like OH&S issues, we put in good equipment, look after our staff, we've got work cover, all that kind of stuff. But cyber risk is generally misunderstood within the small business arena. And although it's an existential threat to our organizations, it's rarely treated as one. And the third and final mistake we see is assuming that your security is being looked after. Now, many businesses either have their own IT staff or they've outsourced that work to a company like Evisent. Now, there can't be an assumption that these issues are just being looked after. They need to be discussed and they need to be documented. Now, just because your IT provider is responsible and they're helpful, which is fantastic, they need to be security focused and they need to be able to demonstrate that on demand. My suggestion would be to ask your IT service provider to explain how they're protecting your business and potentially even get a second set of eyes to review their answers just to make sure all bases are covered.
What impact can cyber incidents have on our business?
They can range from the small to the business ending kind of events. But even on the small end of the scale, it might be a compromise of an email account, for instance, that can run into $5,000, $10,000 in terms of remediation and recovery very, very quickly. If you have a larger attack, something like a ransomware attack, you could be looking at the hundreds of thousands to recover your data and get the business back up on track. And realistically, in the small business arena, those kind of costs could spell the end of the business. You might need to stop trading. That's really what it can come down to. Now, we also have to think about how that attack may affect your clients. Now, say for my business, if we suffered an attack and they used our systems to attack all of our clients, we have to think about the financial damage that it's going to cause to all of our clients as they go through the recovery process, but also the reputational damage to our business. We've spent 7 years building up our reputation, and that can disappear overnight with the right kind of cyber attack.
Yeah, interesting. What should we do as a small business to ensure that we survive an attack?
Look, there are a number of things we can do. The primary one is to have backups. So to understand what data you're holding, what is critical to your business, and to make sure that is not just backed up, but those backups are monitored to make sure they're running and they're regularly tested. We've seen lots of incidents in the past where people assume their backups are running, and then when an incident does happen, they find out that their backups don't work. So that's absolutely number one. The second one is multi-factor authentication, which is free on most of the platforms we use, such as Microsoft 365. Now, multi-factor authentication, most people are familiar with it. You sign in and maybe you get a code sent to your phone. Second form of authentication. That will stop business account takeover by 99.9% according to Microsoft, and that's the most common attack we see by far. The third is software patching. Now, it's important to update your operating systems, like your Windows or your Mac OS X, but also to update your third-party applications. Things like Chrome, which has regular vulnerabilities that can be exploited, things like Adobe PDF, your MyOb, anything else that really sits out there. The fourth one is antivirus. Now, we've got traditional antivirus with things like ESET and WebRoot and McAfee. In my opinion, these no longer cut it. They work by grabbing the file that's been sent to you, checking it against a database, and if it's not in the database, then it lets the file through. It's very rudimentary. Now, we recommend and only deploy next-gen antivirus. That also it does examine the files in a similar way, but also looks for patterns. So it may not be a known malicious file, but it may be able to spot patterns within those files that suggest that it is malicious. They'll also look for other areas of compromise on your machine. If someone's running a script that they don't normally run, or they're trying to elevate their privileges from a user to an administrator, these can all be signs that you've been compromised, and traditional antivirus just won't pick it up. Now, the last one is critical: planning. Now, we need to have incident response plans and disaster recovery plans. So an incident response plan is a step-by-step plan to follow if you do get compromised. So that might be, we call the IT people, we unplug the systems, it's got contacts there for your legal people, for your PR people, for your insurance company. Because when an incident does happen, what we tend to see is chaos. People don't know what to do. They're running around, pulling their hair out, and having that plan to follow is not only going to reduce the stress of an incident, but it's going to improve your response to it and allow you to get back to business a lot faster. The second one is the disaster recovery plan. Now, as many layers of defense we put in, no system is unhackable, so we have to always assume that a breach can happen. Now, this disaster recovery plan, similar to the incident response plan, is a step-by-step plan to run you through exactly how you're going to recover from an incident. So in the case of ransomware, it might be a step-by-step plan about how to restore those from backup. Now, that disaster recovery plan, as long as it's tested, is going to give you absolute assurance that your business can recover in the worst case scenario, and could reduce the recovery time from, say, 3 or 4 weeks down to 3 or 4 hours. Now, in terms of business operations, that's just huge. It really is huge. A couple of other things I'd recommend, email is the most common attack vector at the moment, whether it's phishing emails or malicious files coming through emails. Harden your email system, whether that's Microsoft 365, whether it's Google, whether it's something else. There's lots of different tools, techniques, add-ons, configurations we can do to protect that part of our organization. Now, advice in general, I think we really just need to treat cyber risk in the same way we treat traditional risk. We need to understand it, we need to mitigate it when we can, and we need to make continuous improvements to always make sure we're staying one step ahead of the attackers and can always recover from the biggest event.
Thank you, Hayden. I know Rubiix is in safe hands with our IT, so that makes our business feel a lot safer. If you're interested in talking to either myself or Hayden, we'll put up a slide at the end of this presentation. Thank you, and hopefully see you again soon.
Thank you for having me, Mark.
Pleasure.